All right, good morning and welcome to the Jones Edmunds Engineering Rocks podcast. I am Ken Vogel, Managing Director of Civil Environmental at Jones Edmunds and host of today's show. We have a great show today and we're going to focus in on emotional intelligence. IQ, once known as the primary determinant of success, is now making room for EQ, emotional intelligence. Move over IQ. Research shows that individuals with strong leadership potential tend to be more emotionally intelligent. And no one better to talk to on the topic than my guest today, Kelly Mannel. Using evidence-based techniques, real-time situations, and decades of personal research, Kelly leads organizations through transformative growth. As a Daniel Goleman meta-coach, she trains coaches in EI skill sets, sharing her knowledge of world-renowned research to improve effectiveness of workplace relationships of all levels, including leadership success, global competitiveness, and diversity. She is an expert executive coach with over 30 years of consulting experience. As a coach of the newly founded Goleman EI organization, Kelly brings her 30 years of experience and the weight of the Goleman research and brand to her assignments. Through her affiliation with Korn Ferry, Kelly provides customized solutions to an organization's vision, trajectory, and growth points. She's a writer and frequent guest in the industry, and she's and she also contributed to the Forbes Coaches Council and speaks as a keynote to many industry leaders. In addition, Kelly has worked with numerous Fortune 100 companies, including the Mayo Clinic, Procter & Gamble, CXX, Shell Oil, and dozens of other organizations in finance, healthcare, and manufacturing. And Kelly, I'm going to add to your bio and engineering, because you've also been a big part of our Jones Edmunds leadership program, for the past almost 9 years. So we really thank you for part of that. Welcome to the show today, Kelly. Thanks for being here.
Thank you, Ken. Wow, what a wonderful welcome. I really appreciate it.
Yeah. No problem. So Kelly, let's start off real easy and real simple. Get the ball rolling. What is emotional intelligence and why is that important to us?
Oh, that's great. Perfect question to start out with. And, I get asked this almost every single day, sometimes multiple times. And so I'm going to use the simplest answer so we can remember. And it's listening to your emotions. It's an intelligence system. So it's emotional intelligence is understanding and listening to our emotions. And because it is offering us an unbelievable amount of information. And so emotional intelligence gives us the key to the definition. It's intelligence from our emotions, from having our emotions. That's it. Now, why is it important? The second part. Well, because it's the most sophisticated system that lives within our bodies. And it provides us rich gold of information. And so when we listen to this information, then we're able to navigate the world. It's what I often refer to as with my clients is having the owner's manual for your body. It's like, oh, now I'm experiencing stress. What does that mean to me? What information does that provide? And then what might I be able to do about that? So that's on a simple level, but essentially it's that extrapolated out.
Exactly. And so I have listened in our leadership class for all these years, and it has soaked in. And I know there are, the four main categories of emotional intelligence. The first two are looking inwards, self-awareness, self-regulation. And then the second two are outward looking, social awareness and relationship management. Tell us a little bit about those categories and how that relates to our individual performance.
Oh, that's beautiful. Ken, I'm so proud of you that you can rattle them off so gracefully. So these are called domains. And when we take our training, we call these areas domains because there are many skills or what we call competencies within each of those domains. So the first one we're going to talk about, as you mentioned, is self-awareness. And that is awareness of ourselves. That when you talk about that emotional intelligence system, that's the baseline. And if you're talking about for people that are engineers or architects or people that build things, we're going to call this the foundation. That you have to pour it and it's got to be really good for the rest of this to sit on it, right? So self-regulation can sit on that and social awareness and then relationship management. So if self-awareness is the foundation, it's something that we always have to pay a rich attention to because there's a never-ending dialogue that we have with our self-awareness. So it's an ongoing, and this is hard for people that like to go to school and get an A, but I can tell you that self-awareness is not something you ever graduate from. It's something we sort of wake up and do every day, right? Becoming self-aware. So one of the things you might notice here is there's sun on my hair. I love to work outside as much as I can, especially during the pandemic. Because what I noticed is being inside on Zoom all day was very stressful. And since I'm coaching stressed people, I want to bring my best self. So bringing my best self, what do I do with that information? So I regulate. So I'm self-aware, and now I regulate. I say, well, what can I do? What might I do differently? So that regulation means, well, I'm going to prepare myself to be the best for folks like you today, Ken, and your guests. And so how do I regulate? Well, I sleep well. I'm going to eat well. I'm going to prepare my environment. I'm going to think of all the things that I can do to help manage that self, right? And now that we're getting that sorted out, we have self awareness and then self-regulation. Now we have social awareness. There are other people in the room, right? Can I be aware of others and what's going on with them? And they're also having feelings just like I am, right? Just like me, they're having feelings and emotions. And it's nothing that we can leave at home anymore. We're sort of over those days of thinking that, oh, leave your feelings at home because we're at work now. And really what we've now learned is we actually all bring our feelings with us to work, wherever we are working from. And so being socially aware says, oh, wow, I'm now working with other people who also are having emotions and expressions of those emotions. And now how do I want to manage those relationships? So I want to have a relationship with my friends and my clients. And so we roll all of this information up. I'm self-aware, I'm going to regulate, I'm going to be aware of socially, and then I'm going to concern myself with how then do I manage my relationships with all that information? And that becomes the most sophisticated set of skills because it requires a lot of these other things going fairly well. Does that make sense?
Oh yeah, definitely. And I do have to say, I do cheat a little bit. You gave me these books that I carry around with me all the time. That gives me all the information about the four categories you just talked about. So
Fantastic.
always have it with me handy. So you
Yes.
talked about these skills, that as if people can learn them. I mean, can we learn them, or are we just born with them?
Oh, that's also a great question because some people think, oh, some people are better at it or women are better at it than men. And the reality is we can all learn them. So just like you mentioned earlier, like the IQ scores that we can get if we were to take an IQ test, they're fairly stable after we mature as a young adult. Those scores will pretty much stay around the same. But the emotional intelligence, by just becoming aware, we can increase our emotional intelligence. And then by working on it, like you have done, Ken, and the reading and the study and the practice that you do, you are every day increasing your ability to understand and to apply it. So I talk about it like a wheel. You just keep applying it. And the more you turn it, the better you get at it. It's like riding a bike also. The more you ride, the better you can finally ride without touching the handlebars, right? And so the idea is a lot of this becomes that second nature. So the good news is you can learn emotional intelligence skills for the rest of your life. So wherever your starting point is, that's okay. And then you can just keep on learning. So that's really the good news.
So if we learn it, is there a way to measure it, in ourselves and with the teams? Is that even possible?
Yes, absolutely. And there are a number of really good assessments there. I'd love to use a number of them. The one that you mentioned, Dan Goleman, just earlier. Dan Goleman and Richard Boyatzis together created an assessment called the ESKI. And I like to use that as well. It's one of the most highly regarded assessments, a 360. But there are others that are self-assessment and team assessments as well. So it's easy to do. And I do it with many engineering and healthcare environments. I'll assess, for instance, 20 doctors. And then we can run a team report and we can see how this group is actually performing together. And that really can be very helpful, especially when we have specific outcomes that we're working on together and we have to work in a collaborative manner. Really helpful. Yes. So the answer is yes, it can be measured. Yeah.
Awesome. So we also talked about having a pop quiz today. So all the people who are watching this live right now are going to be asked a question, and if they can choose to participate or not, just answer through the chat function. I'll let you quiz the audience on emotional intelligence.
Okay, great. So I just have some 3 questions, and just answer them either yourself or you can put the answers in the chat function. We'll answer that. We'll ask them one at a time so that we can see the chat function respond. So the first one is on a scale of 1 to 10. Of course, this is very subjective and it's just up to you to how you answer this. 1 to 10, 10 being very, very stressed, 1 being not at all. How stressed are you on a normal day right now? How stressed are you from a scale of 1 to 10? Hopefully we'd be able to see the chat function from here. Trish can probably help us as well. Scale of 1 to 10, how stressed are you on a normal day? We won't call out your names. We just want to look at the numbers.
There we go. We got a 5.
We're getting some numbers now.
5 to 7.
Yeah. Some people will feel like there's a range, you know, some days are better than others, and that's real.
4 to 6.
That is real. We have an 8.
Oh,
Yeah. And if you're feeling fairly stressed, you are not alone. In the pandemic, what we're noticing, many organizations doing work for their organization and managing the organization, they're noticing that many of their team members are very, very stressed in the high quadrants. And of course, that is what we would call a normal response to a global pandemic. As if you're stressed, it's because you're having very likely a very normal response to a very abnormal set of conditions that none of us were prepared for.
Right.
So we see there's a range here, but there's a lot of stress in the group. You can see these numbers from 4 to 8 on that scale. All right, so the next question we're going to say, how resilient do you feel on any day at the moment? Scale of 1 to 10, 10 being very resilient, 1 being maybe not so much. So how resilient do you feel you are? And resilient means that how well are you bouncing back? Like, oh, you've had a tough day, tough week. I've been on Zoom, or I have to work in the office today, or don't have to work in the office today, or whatever's happening in your world. How do you feel like you're managing in terms of your personal resilience? And why I asked this question, go ahead and put it at your answers in the chat. All right, we're seeing 9. Some people feeling pretty resilient. Some people not so much. We got a 3, we got an 8, right? We have a 7. And it can be a range. People say some days I'm, wow, tough. Some days are better than others. We're seeing a 6. We're seeing a 7. Yeah. So when we look at resilience, why I bring this question up is because the people who work on their emotional intelligence skills and all those books that you showed, Ken, that you've been working through, those skills are the skills that help us build our resilient muscle. And really, it's just like a muscle. You go to the gym and you work this muscle, right? And I also want to work the back of that muscle too, to make balance in my life on my arms. And EI requires balance as well. So we have to look at the skills of building the skill, building the muscle, and then also building the balance in that. And for everybody, that can look very, very different. For some people, it means a 3 o'clock nap every day so they can get through the second shift of their day, which could mean children and cooking and then writing some papers after dinner because they're going to school at night. I mean, for all of us, it can mean very, very different things. So the last question I'll ask is, how do you feel about your well-being from a scale of 1 to 10? 10 being well-being is great, 1 being maybe not so much. And that question may come back to the concept of balance, perhaps, for some people. So well-being, how do you feel about your well-being right now? 7 to 8, okay. And the others, how's your well-being? And the reason I ask this is similar to the other. We have a 6, 7. Is when we work on our emotional intelligence skills, which means listening to our inner emotions and understanding, developing our emotional vocabulary, we have the ability to understand where we are on this spectrum, saying, well, I'm having a stressful day. I'm not feeling very resilient. I'm feeling like my balance is out. What can I do with that information, right? Maybe I take a break. Maybe I take a walk. Maybe I take a walking lunch. Maybe Ken and I have a walking meeting where instead of doing other things that close us off in offices with masks and things, maybe you and I decide to take our AirPods and go out and take a walk in the sunshine and have our meeting that way. research shows that walking meetings are healthier anyway. And so if you live in places where, like Florida, like we do, we can get outside a lot more often than some people live in colder climates. So that's really an important thing. So we can see a range of numbers when we talk about that. And so when I bring this up, stress, resilience, and well-being, these are what I would call indicators, right? It gives us a chance to say, if I'm journaling on a daily basis, or if I have lived with my partner or my children, we can be talking about this at home and saying, how can we take care of ourselves? How can we take care of each other, right? And these are this is a baseline emotional intelligence work. So what did you think about that, Ken?
Oh, that was great. And sorry to get that pop quiz on everyone, but I think that was a lot of fun and very helpful in the way you described, the results of our pop quiz. Yeah. But we've also you and I talked about a lot of research on EI, especially since the 1990s. That's really when it really started to grab hold and really get more infamous about what EI was all about. But what are some of the recent results? We talked about the state of the heart EQ research. And so what are some of those research results, and what is that about?
Well, I'm glad you asked that, because, there are so much out there, and I like to focus people's energy on some things that are specific and easy to understand, because I realize not everybody's going to read, 300 pages of research every day, like I choose to do on many days. But there's one organization that I love, that I talk about a lot, is a group called 6 Seconds. They're a global organization. They do EI assessments globally in many different languages. And what's interesting is I love the fact that Josh has been doing research for many years now. And one of the key findings of the latest, what we call State of the Heart report, are, as you can only imagine, that EI scores have gone down globally, right? And what's surprising and interesting, I think interesting to employers perhaps, will be to look at a couple of the key results. And anybody who wants to, they could send Ken or I an email, and we'll be happy to send you the State of the Heart report. What's interesting about this is what employers are needing the most right now are imagination, risk tolerance, and collaboration. If you would think about it, of course, emotional intelligence overall, but it's specifically within those are clusters of imagination. And so this concept of having imagination, how are we going to imagine doing work moving forward? Because work as we once knew it is now gone, probably forever. And so we're going to have to reimagine how we all work together. And if we have a lot of imagination and create some risk around trying new things, like Ken is trying this cool podcast, this is an example of trying something new, taking some risks, trying it out, seeing how it works, right? And so he's used his imagination, he's taking some risk, and then creating a lot of collaborative relationships along the way. So, Cal, can you do this? Hey, and there's another friend, can you do this? And so this podcast is actually a really good example of these 3 skills in action, right? We are all going to need to use these skills moving forward, all of us. There's no one that's going to be exempt globally, absolutely no one. And unfortunately, these skills have gone down in terms of the global report. We're going to need them to trend up, right? And so back to, if you think about the simple model of this, we have to fold back to emotional intelligence for ourselves and for our organization, our stress, resilience, and well-being, and take care of those things so that we can wake up refreshed and say, hey, Ken or boss, I've got a great idea. Let's try this today at work. Maybe it'll work, right? Maybe we do this blended model. Some people can do this and some people can do Zoom, and maybe we can still get our work done. Maybe we create different teams, and that way we can figure out different ways of getting our work done. We're going to have to try lots of things, right? And Ken, you could probably testify to this in your work, right? Have you been doing these things as well?
Well, the podcast, we've been doing that for about a year now. And I was going to say, it makes it, when I have guests like you, it makes it very easy on me, because you can talk for well more than a half hour. You can go for hours, which you do in our leadership class, and much appreciated. But yeah, you try to do different things, and because we get tired of the Teams meetings and the Zoom meetings, and and definitely I see more people going out for walks. I see my window, I see lots of people walking in the parking lot, which is fantastic. I mean, you got to get out and do this. things. Any other things we could do and using the emotion intelligence knowledge that we gain at work? Anything else that we can do?
Yes. So what I was thinking is, and I think you talked about you doing this as well. I really would just, we've got to let go of this old model of like people sitting at their desk means production. We've got to really let go of a lot of this model thinking of that this is a temporary setting and then we're all going to get back to it someday. That's looking backwards. That's looking in the rearview mirror, and it's not going to be helpful for any of us. We've got to look forward and continually reimagine and re-stress ourselves in a good way, to look for different types of results that are going to be productive for the workplace. And I like the fact that you told me the story how you did something that was fun using humor. Really important to do. Being human, what I call human-centric work, which means being able to visit before a call. Say you're all getting on Zoom and you're only seeing this little box and you can't even tell how your colleagues are really doing, right? But we need to ask, how are you doing, right? How is it going for you right now? And taking that time, because there's all that information that's missing from our workday of maybe solving a problem really at the coffee machine or walking in the hall, say, hey, Joe, I have this idea, but we're not having those interactions right now, right? A lot of that interaction is absent from our day. And so we have to rethink about how we will engage people and problem solve and so forth. And when you said you were using humor, I loved the fact that can you tell that story quickly about how you were all decided to take out your trash one day?
Yes. Yeah, it was about we were a few months into the pandemic, and actually it was one of our employees, Toby McKnight, had this idea of, let's all do some funny pictures as we take our garbage out, because this was part of the solid waste department that we have. And so we all took funny photos of us taking the garbage out. We had one of our employees made a great video of him taking the garbage out and his son behind him, watching him and, chasing after him. It was just a great thing, and it was lots of fun to put that kind of thing together.
Excellent. And all of a sudden you're human. You're not just the big guy behind the desk anymore. You're also kind of person who has to take out the trash like I do, and there's all kinds of things in your life. So I would encourage everyone to find a way to build in what I call a human-centric work in terms of understanding the whole person in your relationships and taking time for that. It is not an unproductive part of the meeting. It is absolutely necessary to build a connection. I call them ABCs of having meetings: arrive, breathing, and connecting before you do your business. And those are my ABCs of having meetings: arrive, breathing, and then connecting, right? Once humans connect, there's something in emotional intelligence we call it emotional contagion. If we ignore this concept of emotional contagion, we won't connect. We won't have that ability to connect and build trust and speed in the environment. And so arrive, breathing, and connecting kind of hits the pause button on jumping right into business, right? I mean, even Starbucks, they're great at it. Hey, Miss Kelly, how are you doing today? Can we get you this or that? And they connect, they try to connect, right? And any businesses that build that in are going to do better, because business is all about people and connections with people. And we all know that, but it's sort of, sometimes we forget.
Exactly. And that's one of the things that I definitely have learned, in all the times we've been with you is, I used to be Mr. Grumpy, getting in at work in the morning and, stay away kind of thing, but you can't do that. You have to, you have to be just as friendly as soon as you get into the time you leave. And, and it's sometimes you just have to work at that kind of thing.
Right. Yeah. Especially if we're living in our head and we're very smart and there's lots of things going on, right? I've got spreadsheets and things to do in my head. And I've got to look up. Remember that social awareness piece, that we've got to look up. There's other people in the room. And since we don't pull all the levers ourselves, we have to work with, among, and through others. And we have to build all those connections. They have to be as successful a connection as we are thinking in our brain, right? Yeah. And that social relationship is a leadership trait. It absolutely is crucial for leadership.
Now we're getting close to the end here. If anyone has any quick questions, get them in right now through the chat. Oh, there we go. There's one right there. But if anyone has any other questions, please send them in right now, and we'll get them to Kelly. So Kelly, question for you: do you have any particular IQ and emotional intelligence quizzes, tests that you recommend?
Yeah, I recommend the ESKI. It is required, all these assessments are required, somebody skilled and trained and licensed in them. The ESKI is a very good one. It's designed by Dan Goleman and Richard Biotsits. It's reliable and valid. I also use the EQI 2.0 from Multi Health Systems. It's a very good one. So those are two very good ones. And there's many others. If they can call me that we can talk about. It depends on what application you have, which ones are going to be the best for you.
We'll see if
any other questions.
Yeah, none right this sec, but we'll
comments.
We have a couple more. One more thing, and then there's. Thank you. Can you spell that first one?
The first one, ESCI, Emotional Social Competency Inventory, and it's done through Korn Ferry, licensed through Korn Ferry on that particular one.
Now, we had talked about the pandemic playbook. It was written by EI Global, which is your company as well.
Yes.
That's something I think you said we can get out to people if they were interested. What is the pandemic playbook?
Well, the pandemic playbook was written kindly by a lot of my colleagues who went through the Goleman training with me, and they are so incredibly talented. And what we did was put together articles that said, if this is happening, or be mindful of this, and here, try these things. So each chapter is a different article by a different professional. And I'm happy to send that. It's on the EI Global website for sale, but I'm giving it to anybody on this call for free. Just contact you or I can, and be happy to ship it out to you. It's very helpful I think, somebody says, I often use YouTube or Insight Timer to meditate. Absolutely. Do you have any other app recommendations? Samantha, I really like Insight Timer. I mean, a lot of my friends have practices on there. They're all vetted and very, very good. And also, it's free. I mean, all of these sites, you can register for more, right? You can subscribe. Some of them, you have to subscribe just to get the first level. Insight Timer offers a very robust free level. So you can be on there for free for your whole life. I'm happy to refer other ones to you if you contact me, but there's Calm and Headspace. They're very good. I just love Insight Timer.
Well, we're about at it. Oh no, we got a couple more messages. Oh, just thank you. Okay. Well, we're about out of time. I'd just like to thank everyone for attending. I'd like to especially thank Kelly for being with me today. As usual, you're awesome, and we look forward to the leadership class next year. We'll be getting that going, and so look forward to that. If anyone has any other questions, you could email me at kvogel@jonesedmonds.com, or you can email kmannel@imagepartners.net. I am Ken Vogel, and this has been the Jones Edmonds Engineering Rocks podcast. Thank you for coming.
Thanks, Ken.
Thank you, Ken.